Have you ever wondered how the way we were parented influences how we raise our own children? Do you ever find yourself repeating things your parents did, or maybe intentionally doing things differently? How do you balance the advice that you get from family, friends, and even social media with your own parenting instincts? How have parenting techniques shifted across generations? I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Now, in a world full of parenting advice, how do you decide what works best for your family? Well, today we're joined by Steph, a mum, and her daughter Kate to explore just that. Steph is a professional accredited coach and qualified practitioner in the field of positive psychology. She holds a diploma of positive psychology and well-being. In addition, she's undertaken extensive study in two specialist childhood trauma therapies, internal family systems and compassionate inquiry. In 2017, she co-founded Thriving Leaders, which delivers programs to leaders to empower their performance through enhanced well-being. She has a deep passion for assisting individuals and organisations to thrive, which compels her to excitedly keep abreast of the latest scientific research in neuroscience and positive psychology. She holds an authentic sense of belief and hope for every human, which creates a safe environment to explore and grow. And her daughter Kate is mother to 2.5-year-old Cece. She's founder of Navigate Aged Care and a passionate advocate for intergenerational living. Kate lives with her toddler, husband, and 91-year-old grandma. She holds a master's degree in gerontology and spends her days juggling motherhood, a small business, caring for her grandma, and trying to keep all the balls in the air. So let's see how parenting looked in Steph's generation compared to Kate's, with the experience of a mum today. How their parenting styles have evolved and where they found similarities or differences in the way they approach raising their kids. Good morning, Steph and Kate. It's wonderful to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
So good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. Now, listen, I'm just wondering, before we start, Steph, can you just give us a rundown of what you do for a living and what brought you to that and how you love it?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I just worked out that last month it's 18 years now that I've been life coaching. Absolutely love it. But in that journey, I started out as a pure life coach, and then I moved into positive psychology, and then more recently, in the sort of more twilight part of my career, I've moved more into childhood trauma sort of space. So because I found that was the piece that seemed to be missing when I was working with people. You can get them so far, but sometimes or often there was these deep traumas that needed help to be addressed. So absolutely love it. 18 years on, it pinched myself that I could be so lucky to do this every day.
Oh, that's fabulous. Not many people can say that, Steph. What an amazing thing to be able to say. And Kate, tell us about you.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of the other end of the spectrum. So mum's working in childhood trauma and I'm working in aged care. So I support people and their families to access aged care services. So run my own business doing aged care consulting. And yeah, just love it. It's such rewarding work. I am so privileged to work with people in the later years of their lives and also just help families through what can be a pretty chaotic and challenging time.
And we'll be talking to Kate about that on some other podcasts, yes, because it is a very challenging time, and many of the people of my age group are currently right there at this moment. But what I do now, Kate and Steph are family friends, and Steph and I go a long way back to very early in our childhoods. And I just always remember Kate growing up and always loving older people and always, just talking about them in such a beautiful way, because we tend to forget that old people have got such a history behind them and so much there. So, yeah, kudos to that, Kate. That's an amazing thing. Now, listen, what we're going to do today, though, is we're going to talk about parenting. So we're going to talk about how Steph was parented, how she parented, and how you're parenting and how you felt about your being parented. So let's just start. All angles. So, Steph, let's just start with you and just, we were parented in the same era. What did parenting look like then?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was laughing. Kate and I were talking. Kate now, for the record, has my mum, so her grandmother, live with her, and so the stories that still roll out. What we're talking about, Mum has this fairly broadly infamously known line of "You'll get a thick ear." It's
Right.
whenever you did something wrong, there was often a threat of some sort of physical punishment.
Yeah.
I have to say, it wasn't often actually carried out. I
Mhm.
reckon it had to have been carried out at least once to have the level of fear that you had around it.
That's right.
But it was more that generation that you ruled by a little bit more of authority and fear to get the children to be compliant and do what they wanted to do. And I don't want that to sound like
No.
I had it was
Yes.
very standard, but there were, and she also had 5 children. Like it was a lot to herd together when you had 4.
Yeah.
Your mum.
Quite a few.
Yeah. But yes, it was, I think the major difference that I see, or the thing for me, was there was those threats of some sort of physical punishment for non-compliance.
And that's what I remember too. My father had a strap on the fireplace. I don't think any of us ever got it. But the minute he went for it and started counting, we were out of there. We were like, we're gone,
No way.
type of thing. So, but I kind of look at them and I go, what kind of parenting information do you think they would have had?
I feel like they were perhaps caught in this, I have such a passion about the old traditions of the village, the tribe, and the richness of that. And I don't believe for a moment we were meant to bring up our children by ourselves. So they're definitely, it's a tried old term, but it does take a village. And I think our parents got caught in that shift from village. It was shifting then. It became a little, and you and I were brought up more in the country. There was less, that probably sounds like there'd be more village, but in the context of where we were, I think our parents were more isolated, and yet not yet the social media or any other sort of internet connection. I think they did parenting pretty much on their own, with perhaps some check-ins with friends and guidance. In my case, I can say from my grandmother, like mum's mum, and hers was pretty fierce way of
She was. She was. And I kind of go, was it a good thing not to have a mum or a mother-in-law, or was it a bad thing? I think my mum left England to escape hers. So, it's kind of a different modality and a very different way of thinking about children too. I mean, at that time, there was nowhere near the compassion or the way that we're parenting these days. So how did that affect your parenting, Steph? What did you go into parenting with?
Actually, I'll just quickly speak to that point, because my mum says to me all the time, "Oh my gosh, you girls just overthink your parenting. I didn't. I just did it." And to an extent, that's true. She feels sorry for me, and even more sorry for Kate's generation, for the amount of information is also can paralyze you and creates a whole world of fear. And Kate will probably talk more into that. Now I've forgotten your question, Sally.
No. So how did that affect your parenting? What did you bring into parenting? Did you bring anything from your mother? Or, because we didn't have a lot around at the time.
No, we didn't. I've had a lifelong passion for psychology, which is what's ended me working in this space. So I recall, whilst I was pregnant, just consuming childhood books around how to raise children. Now, having said that, they're not how I would parent today. It's not how I parent my granddaughter, let alone my daughter. It was different. Things change. But I definitely read a lot of books, so that guided me a little bit away from mum. But the mum and dad. But the foundational piece of mum and dad was very much it was very love based. We really see you. We might have a stack of time for you because they were extraordinarily busy, but when you did, they saw you completely. And I think I certainly tried to bring that component of what I had for my children.
Yeah. And did you take any notice of any, like we had our CAFS groups, didn't we? And I always remember reading what to expect when you're expecting, going through that every month, now you girls have got everything on NAP. I know and understand that. But it's like, it was very much that. And you relied on that CAFS nurse to give you information about your child and its development. And I know that in the early days we formed those groups so that we were with people who were bringing up children at the same time. that were the
Yes.
same ages as us. And that was kind of beneficial, except you always hated the one that went, oh, my child slept through the night ever since they've been born. I wanted to shoot them. But it's but I agree. I don't think we had a lot there, and we did have to do it on what we had in the past. So as your children were growing up, were there any other avenues that came into your life along that way? Were there any people that you looked at in high regard? Like
There was a lot of that CAFS group was pretty important to me in that beginning. They've become lifelong friends. There's a few, number of them in there that I still see, and we can't believe how much our conversations have shifted into now hot flushes and from pregnancy tests. But that they were really helpful. I think the key component of that was just normalizing your experience by talking to other parents. It's like, oh, this isn't just me. This is hard.
Absolutely. And so are there any parts that, you parented then that you would change now, that you would do totally differently? Or are there parts now that you go, that wasn't such a bad thing?
Especially now because of my childhood trauma training. And I just want to be clear here. When I say childhood trauma, I'm not necessarily talking about what we call big T traumas, like being bashed or beaten or whatever. The little T traumas are just as impactful. So they're where we feel not seen, not heard, not enough. And knowing so much more about that space, the one thing I wish I could change, and I can't, and I mean, my kids are beautiful and turned out quite well, so I'm not overly worried. Very well. Thanks. But when Kate was a baby, the definite number one advice was control crying with your baby. So you'd have to put them down, walk out of the room, and leave them to cry. I think it was for 1 minute, first of all. You'd go back, you'd just reassure them, you'd walk out for 2 minutes and then 3 minutes, and you keep building until they'd eventually cry themselves to sleep, because that taught them how to get themselves to sleep. And I now know what that actually taught them is there's no point in calling out anymore. So you might as well just let go and go to sleep. But it's a real disrupt with the connection with the parents. Now, I also want to be clear, it's not major trauma, and all the other connections we had were strong, and they buffer for those things. And sometimes that is what you have to do. Sometimes, even today, even with that knowledge, that is a better option than throwing the baby or, whatever. So
right.
There's no judgment here. I'm saying for me, I wish that hadn't been the advice of the day.
Yeah. And that was very strong advice at the time. And as you and I discussed, I didn't do it, but I didn't do it because my kids actually vomited. We would sit near the child monitor and Jack would be screaming, and I'd be saying, no, we have to leave him for, a few more minutes, and then we'd hear, ugh. And then he would go there and he would have thrown up because he had a low gag reflex. So my kids never got controlled, cried because we couldn't stand cleaning up the mess afterwards. So it wasn't necessarily not going with the times. It was actually more a factor of it didn't happen. And I did spend 3 years in jet lag because they never slept for the first 3 years of their life properly. So there are a whole lot of things around that. And I don't know, Kate, when we get to that, might just ask you what you guys do.
Do you
your
remember crying to
generation.
sleep?
Yeah, actually, was that one of your traumas, Kate?
That's it. That's it. That's what I was here to discuss.
So, Kate, what do you remember about your childhood and parenting, and the positives and some negatives, if there were any, about with your childhood?
Yeah, I remember all of it very fondly. I think Mum had me at 26, and I remember compared to other kids at school, she felt like a really young mum. Like was always out there running around and doing the netball coaching with us, and just like really involved and fun. And I love that. And that's something that I really want to emanate with my kids as well, is because she felt different to other mums. And I don't say that in a negative way to anyone else, but I think because of the time and effort she put into understanding those things too, there was a real focus on connection and quality time. And that meant a lot growing up. You knew when you had mum's attention, you had her full attention, and you felt really, really seen and valued. To an extent that I've literally talked to my psychologist since to be like, I don't know if anyone in the world will ever see me to the same extent that mum does, that I have a really unrealistic expectation on my husband sometimes to be like, did you not just see that I just made the bed? Can you tell me how good I am for doing that?
Maybe
Because
not,
I'm so
Kate.
used to it. No, I know. We're working through that.
Yeah, that's right. That's a high expectation of a husband.
I know. Bless. My psych's like,
Bless.
well, what a beautiful problem to
Yeah,
have. I was like,
that's
it
right.
is. So I think that's something that I really valued and that felt really special in my childhood. And I think, it's something that I try to really focus on as a mum as well, is making sure that when I am with her, and I do work part-time when there's a bit of a juggle in that, but making sure at the times that I am with Cece, I'm really present with her and not distracted by all the other things, because I know how much that meant to me as well.
Yeah, because they are the things that now are kind of imperative and it's known, but we didn't know back then. We were just giving our time. And like you say, some parents knew to connect and it comes naturally and others don't, do they? You know, they have no idea. There's just no idea. Even today, there is no idea in that sense. So in terms of parenting for you, Kate, I agree with Grandma. I just think there is so much out there for you to be looking at and parenting with. And so tell me, where do you get your parenting information from?
Yeah, look, I think if anything, I've had to narrow it down over the years. So for a bit of context, so my daughter Cece's 2.5, and I think probably it took me a good year to really find my feet in what's important to me and not being overwhelmed by the information. I'm someone, and I probably get this from mum, but I do a lot of reading on what best practice is and I read so much during my pregnancy and during those early years. And I think it can be, particularly now with social media and a lot of readily accessible information, it's easy to be overwhelmed with how many naps should my child be on? What should they be wearing when they're sleeping? When do I start solids? Should I do baby-led weaning or should I do purees? Or is it best to have any screen time? Should we have no screen time? It's endless, the number of questions that you can be asking yourself. And I think for me in those early years, that very first year, I was so focused on doing everything perfectly that I ended up with postnatal depression in that too, because it's just not possible to do all of it perfectly all the time. And I think after being in not a great space with that and working through it, it's really helped me actually narrow down and work out what's important to me, who the people and resources in my life are that I trust and value, and also just having more confidence in myself to, I guess, trust the pieces that make sense and ignore the pieces that don't. That parenting is such a unique experience and everyone will have different values that they bring to that. And I feel a lot more comfortable and confident at 2.5 years in it going, okay, that's great that works for you, but this is how we do it. And just understanding, where I sit in that picture too.
And Kate, that takes a lot of learning and a lot of, because honestly, everything that's out there, you've got your TikTok and your Instagrams and all that stuff. And, watching what's best and seeing all these influencers and seeing people that actually haven't got a lot of knowledge, but have got a lot of knowledge and putting stuff out there. I can imagine that would be very overwhelming. And I even feel that sense of pressure on you guys for, we might talk about this a bit in our next podcast, but that pressure to be perfect. I don't think we had that pressure back in our days because we didn't know what perfection looked like. There was no visual thing of what was perfect.
Yeah.
We struggled with tantrums and things like that I actually had no idea how to solve. So we did it in our own way, the best we could. We didn't sit in the emotions. None of that was available to us or there. But then the complexity of everything that you actually have to live up to nowadays, I can very much understand what a struggle that must be for most women, young women, coming through this.
I think it's not uncommon for people to just get completely overwhelmed in that first period of time. And I think, like any new mum, you do slowly kind of find your own networks and you connect with other mums that have similar values to you. And you do, like, one of my best friends now, who I really didn't talk to that much before I had a kid, but she had a baby 7 months before me. We message pretty much every day now because your kids are on the same level, and I know how aligned we are in how we parent, that you just find your people that really understand what's important to you, that you can have a whinge to, that you're not judged by, that you can say, we threw it all out the window and we did X, Y, Z today, and they go, good on you, you do what you got to do. Like, it really helps you find your people in that too. So I think as awful as it can be at times, there's kind of this flip side too, where you have this opportunity to make some really special connections in there, which I guess is replacing that old kind of CAFS group. Like, CAFS groups still exist, but I think they probably hold a slightly different role to what they used to for, say, mum's generation parenting.
So, Steph, you've joined Kate in a lot of her views of parenting. So how did that work for you? Did it start when Kate had Cece, or was it a point of view that you brought along all the time? What's got you in?
It probably actually started during pregnancy, and as I said earlier, I have an innate passion for this. So it's not like it's a duty or a chore to try and understand this for Kate's sake. It's very much a passion and a love. I knew even when Kate was pregnant, Kate really helped to point me towards because I had the privilege of being at Cece's birth, and Kate had a home birth, and almost you won't go into that, but anyway,
a whole other podcast.
But understanding through so much neuroscience that I understand now, I knew in terms of my trauma work and my positive psychology work, but I hadn't drawn it down into the nuance of birthing and the chemicals during the birth process and so on. And Kate pointed me towards some brilliant resources that we're both so aligned to. And I think it really started from there, and we'd have conversations then around what her expectations were, what mine are, mine lesser, but how, we've just continued to, we lean into each other, I'd say almost, equally, because I look after Cece one day a week, and Kate's a terrific resource, and I'll go, I've tried this and this. She's a very independent, starting out lightly, nose in mind, beautiful, delightful, delicious child.
Well done.
So I'll just have to, sometimes I'll ring Kate and I'll just go, I tried this, and she go, yep, I tried, so we tend to bounce off each other quite a lot. We both, you refine, or we've both refined down our social medias, like on both, say, TikTok, but for me mostly Instagram. I've now just narrowed it down to a couple of people that I follow that I really respect, that are aligned with the way that I would parent and Kate's parenting. So I pick up some great tips from there. We shoot each other podcasts fairly regularly. If there's one like, this nails it, listen to this. So we tend to sort of keep each other informed, but obviously we're on the same page. So
yes. So is there anything that either of you have gathered from there that is just the best thing since sliced bread that you would tell everybody to do?
Ooh. Is there one that comes from you guys?
That's very general.
Yeah.
Yep.
I really, this wasn't so much known when I was parenting. I love that aspect of sit alongside them with their emotions, and you're not responsible for moving them out of it. You're responsible for creating a safe, energetic space for them to navigate their emotions through, but not take them away. It's, no parent wants to see their child suffering of any kind. So it's very normal you want to come in and make it right. So you'll come on, we'll go, and I wouldn't literally do this, but let's go and have an ice cream. And then that changes it all, rather than let you sit for a moment. I'm not necessarily talking about pain as in physical pain. If you've fallen over, that needs attending to, but something that was more of an emotional thing, like they didn't get what they want, or a friend was mean to them, or the brother hit them over the head. No, that's probably it. But it's allow them the space to work through and learn that all emotions are transient, and they will come to an end. And they come to an end when you get to sit and feel it. And they don't learn that if you come in and make it right for them. So that's probably the biggest thing that I do with Cece that I didn't do with Kate. I'll just sit alongside her, one of her many, many, many opportunities each day with her big emotions. And
right stage of life, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5. I see this is difficult for you. You know, and I'll just sit there and, you know, I'll help normalize it for her. I'll help, not so much normalize, but
Name the feeling.
Yeah, name the feeling, give her the access, but not take it away.
And what outcome do you usually find from that then? What happens?
She gets there, and she's very reflective, especially for a 2.5-year-old. She'll often reference back later on, either through her dolls in play or to you in another form, but that she's heard or understood. She'll replay stuff. Yeah,
And she pretty much from, I'd say almost 18, well, as long as she can talk really, even as she's learning those emotions, she'd be the one that kind of go, I'm feeling frustrated. Okay. What you feeling frustrated about? Oh, she's always been quite good at naming and identifying those things, because I think what's been really helpful too is we've probably both always held a philosophy of, and because we're always quite obsessed with learning about these things far ahead, is just starting it and getting us used to the language before she's even at the point that she needs it, because it just means she's grown up with this way of speaking and thinking and being, and by the time you're really needing to implement it, we felt quite comfortable with using that language, because it felt silly the first time when she's, 1 year old and you're going, oh, I can see you're feeling a bit disappointed that you can't, like she's got no idea what's going on. No. But in so many ways, it's really helped embed that too, so that it feels so normal at 2.5 to say that she can identify it, and it doesn't feel weird having those conversations with her because we've just kind of done it forever.
I think that's great. And is that the one you would choose too, Kate?
I think on the whole it probably is. I think the other one that just came to mind that's probably more in terms of the newborn period, but is just, as you alluded to before, delete the apps. The apps make everything worse. It can be so easy. As someone with somewhat perfectionist tendencies, you can get obsessive about what time did they feed, how long did they feed for, or they pooed at this time but they haven't done this then, and there's a particular app that I actually never went down the path of, which I'm glad I didn't, that looks at wonder weeks, so particular leaps in their development, and it can be really easy to get caught up in, there's a bad week coming, it's going to be hard at that point, and it's just, I find that stuff really unhelpful. Obviously, if you have a baby that's maybe underweight or you're needing to pay close attention to how often they're feeding or something, great. But if things are going along fine, I think you just learn so much more trying to really learn the skill of tuning into your own intuition, because I think that's probably what I mistook as well, is that doesn't necessarily come immediately. You actually have to learn to trust your process and learn to identify your intuition when that happens. And I think the apps just kind of make that all a lot harder and more complicated than it needs to be.
They're really wise words, both of you too, because I think that sitting in it, like you say, was never there for us. But it's, as they say too, around that too, when our partner comes home and they're really angry or frustrated, and we, same thing, oh, wow, you had a terrible day at work, or not, here's your dinner. And shut them down as fast as you can. Like if we look at adults, we don't do that with children. And I think that I agree with you, Steph. I think that's a wonderful thing that's come through that we didn't have in our time. And Kate, apps and that perfectionism. And if you're sitting there scrolling, doomsday scrolling, because you actually got time on your hands during the day and they're having a rest. And it gets into your brain. And I think trusting yourselves is a lot of what, I shouldn't say younger people like you, but I think you don't have that self-trust anymore because you are so open to so much of this. Social media is just has another whole topic too, but that's something that I think I often say to my daughter, get rid of it. Like, for goodness sake, you don't need that. You don't need that to tell you that other people are, like looking at it and going, oh, that person's wearing that and they're more beautiful and that person's got the best looking baby. You don't need it. You don't need it, seriously. Yeah. Well, like you say, if you ground yourself, you're a great person in what you're doing, then that's more than enough. And I just, very wise words, both of you. So thank you so much for being with me today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you girls again next week. So
welcome. Us too.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. As we wrap up today's discussion, I want to leave you with a few questions to reflect on as you think about your own parenting journey. What lessons have you learnt from your parenting experiences or from how you were raised? How do you see your parenting style evolve? And what have you changed based on what you learnt along the way? Have you ever found yourself caught between parenting styles of different generations? And if you have, how have you navigated those influences on your own life? What are some parenting techniques you've tried, and what did you find worked best for your family? Finally, after listening to the stories from Steph and Kate, what is one key takeaway that you can apply to your own parenting or grandparenting journey? Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who is Responsible or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. And many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.